I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. I cut my teeth on wedding rings.
Dude, that's pretty cool.
Man, that is
I'm the
that
sad
is a
clown.
sad clown.
Proud of my address.
Dude, that's pretty good.
This is The Gloom, bringing you weekly interviews with F3 Omaha Pack, exploring their F3 experiences and finding those sticky elements that create the glue in the gloom.
Is a man that I've just come to know and really love and enjoy. Just he has a passion for leadership, a passion for helping other men to get better, and has served as a fight Q. He's also served in the military, supporting our country, and has really, I think, just embraced this idea of F3 as a vehicle to help men get better, to impact the community. So LPC, man, I'm thrilled to hear your story, get your story out there. I feel like we've connected a lot, but just would love to hear kind of where it started, who aged you, what was the first workout like? Was it hard, compared to boot camps or other things you've done? And then where'd the name LPC come from, if you don't mind?
LPC, yeah. Oh, thanks, Plague. Good to be here. To start, there's always been a resounding message ever since, I would say, even high school to college, that men need other men, and I don't think you can fully reach your other potential or fully go down the path of maximize your potential without the escort of other men that are going through that same walk. And so that's where this brotherhood idea came from. I didn't have I had friends and some in high school, but they were not sticky, right? They went through the sifter as soon as I left. I'm not in touch with many of those people. They're different lives, and I hope them the best. And largely a lot of the same things in college. My priorities were just a little different. I thought differently and found that it really was something of power to think a little bit differently, and it was hard to be accepted in some of those circles to the fullest, because I just didn't entertain some of those kind of maybe short-sighted beliefs. And once I found out, once I went in the Marine Corps, and then sequentially the F3, I was embraced by a bunch of people that wanted way more for others and for themselves. And I think that you can't really be ready for your own success until you start to celebrate other success.
Oh,
and I think that has really shown light in F3 and in the military, of being super intentional about relationships, because it's all about something bigger than yourself. And there's legacy throughout those elements that you can build on. But and I think that's what the most powerful things that in the civilian world that F3 provides is a venue for people to check the ego at the door. Just know we don't give it any oxygen.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was an honor to be a site Q and kind of take that leadership role there. And my site was a little unique because we had Q source, which I love. I'm a huge believer in men collaborating about issues and challenges and successes, and around some sort of construct. And that's what the Q source provides, is a framework to engage in conversation, challenge the status quo of where you're currently at, what you should start doing, stop doing, keep doing. Shout out to Sparty for bringing as the 3 phrases to my mind today. But it's impactful. It's very, very impactful. So yeah, I know it's kind of hit on a different myriad topics there. It was kind of an intro. Yeah.
It's great, and I do want to circle back to kind of who aged it, that sort of stuff. But first, I guess I'm curious, the like identifying that men need other men. Where do you think that started for you? Like, when did you know that, or is that just was that through the military growing up, or what? How did you come to kind of realize that truth?
Gosh, great question. Trying to identify time or season in my life where I recognized that. I think honestly, I think it came at a very young age in a nebulous situation. I think it was so I'm the youngest of 3 kids, and my brother and sister are 13 and 14 years older than I am.
Oh, okay.
So I was very acutely aware of older siblings, older demographic of people at all times in my life. So I really had 2 sets of parents. I had my mom and my dad, and then I had like a subset.
No.
I had a little bit looser rope, my sister and my brother.
Hmm.
And everybody was giving me insight at any and every time, and depending on what I needed. And the one thing I noticed was I always wanted to be led by people I looked up to, and that was largely my brother, sister, mom, dad, and specifically my dad and my brother.
Mm.
So I've always longed for and been exceptionally open to them providing advice, recognizing good, bad, and ugly in myself, and talking to me about it. Because from their point of view, they don't love me any less for my imperfections.
Right.
They only love me in spite of those. So that in itself is super important. So when you find men that you can share that stuff with, or that can recognize that in you, your talents or maybe your blind spots, I think that only helps you succeed, because you know that you're in an environment that I am who I am, and God has made me perfect in His eyes. So with His eyes of perfection, I have a purpose no matter what. And for other people to recognize that, sometimes when you can't, a man can only recognize those in another man. A woman cannot.
Yeah.
A woman cannot tell me and teach me how to be the best version of a man, because she is not a man.
Right.
So you only get that in other shared leadership with other men. And that's the act of being led and taking leadership. It's both.
Right.
It's not just always being led. You will have to step up and fall at times in order to grow, because that's a discomfort that's needed through life in order to not stay stagnant.
Yeah, man, I love that. And I think something that, I'm realizing and just the impact or benefit of healthy conflict, right? It's like, and we have that at F3 so many times. It's like we maybe disagree, but then like we still leave and we pray and we love each other, right? It's like we disagree, give feedback. There's no like hard feelings, right? It's just like, hey, this is something I noticed, so those, having a space where that is failure, conflict, some of those things that help us grow are just the norm. Because like most workplaces, like I can tell you, conflict is not the norm, right? It's this like avoidant thing, and then when it does come up, it's really, really painful because people bottle it up. So anyway, I love hearing that.
I would challenge another thing about conflict and rephrasing this, and just would love to. Conflict usually arises when someone is taking offense or feeling judged.
Yeah.
Right? So conflict is the result of whatever action and how somebody receives something. My opinion and my perception is it's not conflict unless we make it conflict. Conflict is something we create.
Yeah.
However, what it can be is and oftentimes when we use candor, that creates conflict. But in the essence itself of whatever that candor is, if you take it for an absolute neutral comment and do with it what you will, you are the one that has the freedom to decide how you receive that.
Yeah.
So conflict, you're right. We, especially in the civilian world, and especially in our world right now, we have a tendency to always have to err on the side of using mittens and kid gloves. Well, unfortunately, when you're using mittens and kid gloves, it's hard to hold on to things, and it's hard to wrap your hands around anything.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get your hands dirty and feel the grit, the dirt of what makes things vulnerable as well as what makes things better. And so, it allows us, if we can actually take it for what it is and then move on. Conflict is not because conflict becomes an excuse. It becomes a state of victimhood. I'm in a conflict and I don't agree with how they're approaching me. Well, let's just check it right there. The nice thing about being comfortable in our own skin or wherever we're at, you choose to take offense to that, or you choose to engage that conflict. You know, so you know, and that's very hard. We can't control how somebody receives it, but we can control how we deliver a message.
You know what you made me think of was you know, so many times, you know, you want to give somebody feedback and you maybe pause. And I think if if your intent is to just love people and be honest with them, and you know, but I think for me sometimes it turns to like I want the motive behind why I want to give that feedback. And you know, and then if it's then I start protecting my own ego, right? My ego goes into self-image protection, and so I love it. And you know, something that I just I love about you is just your passion for learning. I know you're a reader, you're a podcast guy, you're like always trying to get insight from other people. You know, you ask great questions, and I don't know where do you feel like that? Because to me that's a skill, or you know, like somewhere that desire was created to learn. And I don't know any insight on where that comes from, or how a guy could start to grow.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it comes from I always want to be able to engage with people. I always want to add some sort of value to wherever I'm at. And I think the best way to do that is to create opinions. Yeah. And in order to create opinions, you have to learn things.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in you fight passionately for what you believe in, but you stay open-minded.
Yeah.
Right? And that can get muddy if you don't understand that that's possible. Like I can fight, I can defend my position until you can't. And that's what open-mindedness is to stay. So that's one part of it. The other part of it would have to be, there was an element when I was younger, going back to as a child, with me being around older people all the time. I mean, my mom was almost 40 when she had me. And so I was around older groups of people all the time. So in order to have any sort of voice whatsoever, I had to have a conversation like an adult.
Yeah.
So it made me grow up really fast in social dynamics. And read rooms and read people, and to how to use humor to diffuse situations, and how to read body language, and understand about people's where they're at, whether it be profession or family, and to remember those things to bring them back in the next time I see them to make them feel welcome. And so it kind of, so it stems from both those. I was pursuing intellectual, heightened intellect, you know, just being more of an intellectual in social situations, and then in turn it proved to be very great skill over life of just being able to connect to people, which that has been immensely more gratifying than pursuing to engage in the conversation, but just being able to add value to somebody.
I love that. How do you deal with and maybe this is me, so you can just, you know, but to me, it's like I love to read and learn and sort of, you know, in the endless pursuit of knowledge. And if I'm not careful, I will start to create an ego. Like I know something, right? And so I've really had to train myself to like every interaction, every person, I can maybe add value to them, but they can also add value to me. And so trying to just get in the habit of listening. But I don't know, maybe you haven't struggled with that, but as you're pursuing knowledge, gaining knowledge, then how do you, is it just a timing thing, or I don't know, maybe that's a me issue.
Well, no, I think you and I share a similar trait in that. Sometimes we seek to want to be right, or to have people recognize that we do know a lot.
Yeah.
It's not a great, it might keep us hungry, but it doesn't satisfy us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So the one thing that I think would probably resonate, one is humility, right? God has a tendency to humble us in sometimes the most unforeseen moments, or sometimes the most public moments.
Yeah.
And that is for the simple effect of, in my mind, to recognize that, you know, everybody has value. You can learn something from everybody. But I also don't think that automatically means you take a passive position.
Right.
because you still have to stand up for your self-worth, and you make that decision. So I think it comes from a humility, and I think it comes back to some of the men you surround yourself with to keep you humble. Yeah. And I remember a time I was in college and I was rushing a fraternity, and I really wanted to be part of this fraternity. I liked all the guys, and then I really wanted to be part of it. And during rush week, you're with these 12, 13 guys nonstop. And I was one of the guys that always wanted to do this. Other guys kind of came in later in the process, and they all said yes to, and they got their bids, and we were all there. And we came to this point of, picking a pledge class leader. And I kind of like didn't make an assumption in the sense that it would be me, but I definitely was like, I want to do this, right? And like thought I should be the one who does it. However, I was one of the outsiders of the group. The big group that came in were all friends, close friends, lived on the same floor in the dorm, and they were tight. I was on lunch. I wasn't in any of their classes. I knew them because I played sports with them, but they were not. I was not in the inner circle of that group. And one night we were running around doing shenanigans stuff, and I had these tasks, and we came back to one of the dorm rooms, and one of the guys just said out loud in front of everybody, "Compton, I've had enough of your shit. Just learn to follow." And I was like, I shut up immediately. I was not. I was embarrassed, and I wasn't offended. I was just embarrassed because I didn't want to take away from everybody else's experience because I really wanted this too. But it did teach me early on that in order to ever lead, like you have to follow. There's no way that comes where leadership comes first, only within yourself. So obviously I was having a hard time just leading myself through the process. But there's a graduation or a maturity that happens when you can recognize that, hey, I need to take a step back in order for this to move forward. And doesn't mean step out or step away always, but it definitely means to take a step back and more of an observation, actively observing, actively participating, but not necessarily leading in the capacity of title. And that was a big deal. And that helped me tremendously as soon as I went into the Marine Corps. Massively.
Well, and I know you've had experience building a team out yourself, LPC, and I mean, are you seeing the same things on your end?
So I have not done a very good job. I've had a team build out 2 different times, and both times we ended up pulling chalks and going our separate ways. The first time wasn't the right people, I would say, or right fit. My focus was probably not. Was not proper. I wasn't in a place where I knew how to lead in that capacity or in that environment. Fast forward a couple of years, I had more personal individual success, and then I was like, you know what? I thought there were some signs, and like some of my deep thinking led me to wanting to do that again. And so I had some people that approached me, hey, we're really interested in real estate. We want to talk to you. Seemed like a really fit, young, energetic guys, hungry. And about a year later, they went their different ways. One of them went and joined a different team in real estate. And then the other one actually went to go work for my best friend in Louisiana. And I was really upset, or I was heartbroken or frustrated and embarrassed the first time it happened. And then the second time, it was a relief that they went along their way. For a couple of reasons. One, I was at peace with my effort to help them. And then two, I realized that people and tasks or jobs or challenges are seasons, and they all run a course. And one, I truly believe that I left them in a better position coming into the next stage of their life than they came into it. So that was one thing. But the other thing is, neither of those guys would have recognized another opportunity for their growth without the connection through me. And that might sound a little narcissist, but the reality is, like, we all get connections along the way, and nothing's done alone. And the one guy, I have really good relationships with both of them. I ask them how things are going. It's very candid. And so it's not maybe that it worked out, I guess, in my mind, how it should have. And will I go down that road again? I will definitely work to build a team again, because I think that there's a lot of synergy that happens with that. I just don't know in what capacity that is, or what kind of business or line of work that is, as I kind of continue to grow professionally. But I learned a ton. I learned a lot about how I am most effective to reaching others. And that's still growing, but it shined a lot of light on what energizes me versus what can take energy away.
So, I'm curious on the different reactions you had to, what you classified as a failure, and then, but can be seen as successes in their own right.
Yeah.
So what was it about the first experience that you had kind of this more visceral emotional reaction, and then over to this next one where you're kind of at peace with it?
Yeah. So the first one was I was going a gung ho, and I had some support from some outside resources, and at the end of the day, those people that I brought on, my vetting process was minimal. It was about head counts versus quality, and that showed over time. And so it was a matter of I didn't do my due diligence like I told myself I would. I worked through negotiating with myself, like, oh yeah, just bring them on, we'll coach them up over time. And that didn't work out, and we weren't in alignment. We just weren't in alignment. In my expectations were clear initially, but we're not. I didn't trust and but verify. I didn't inspect what I expected, and things fell through the cracks. The nice thing, the unfortunate thing with that was that first time I went trying to build that. I went 3 months without a paycheck, and that was hard. That was like a gut check moment. You look yourself in the eye and say, hey, I went 90 days in a 100% commission-based employment, no paycheck. And that's when your wife is like, hey, when's your next closing? And I'm like, I don't know. So that was a gut check moment for me. Actually, kicked my butt in gear. It ended up being my most successful year production-wise to date. In 9 months, I revamped it and turned it around for myself, but learned a lot. Had a lot of honest conversations with myself. But fast forward to the next one, was way more organized, way more deliberate, way more accessible, and I did it the best way I knew how at that point. And the other thing I realized was that if in order to do this correctly, I wouldn't be able to do it alone. And I did it alone. I am not the best fit for all roles of a team. I am very vision-based, very big picture, and that doesn't serve one-on-one development very, very well. I can do that for short stunts of time, but I am very much about laying the groundwork for the big picture and saying, hey, there's a hill, we need to take that. I don't care how we get there, but we got to take the hill. So we got whatever the mission is, whatever that looks like. I use military speak, but it's just very clean to me. And that doesn't resonate with a lot of people. And so those probably aren't great fits for me and are us really. And that's okay. Doesn't mean we can't work together, but maybe they're on the same team.
Man, a couple things. I love your self-awareness, courage, vulnerability to identify, reflect, and learn from, a situation that you would consider failure. I think that to me in and of itself is a skill that is lacking probably in a lot of leaders or just people in general. So thank you for doing that. The other thing I heard you say in there that I'm curious how you learned this, because I'm good at this, but recognizing, that because I'm good at this, that I may not be the best skill to do, the one-on-one coaching. I think there's maybe a small part of all of us that wishes we could do some coaching and help somebody else transform. But I think recognizing that's not what I'm best at. I can do it, but I don't know. How did you talk to me through that process, just the self-awareness and identifying the skills that are wrapped up in that?
Yeah.
Or just experience over time. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to articulate thoughts as they run through my head like storm systems here, weather systems. I think I, I think hyper self-awareness is exceptionally important, and I'm still developing that tool. But the more aware I am of myself, the slower things around me go. So my reaction time is better. I have more tact. I deliver my message cleaner. But I have to know myself before things around me slow down. So that's, a lot of that is just like deep thinking. Just like quieting noise around me allows me to get in my own head. If I continue I'm not a huge fan of having music at workouts, especially when they're in groups, because there's enough mumble chatter to keep my mind occupied in general. And I think there's some serious healing in the darkness and in the quiet of finding out who you are. So that's one thing. And then the other thing would be, in order for me to be successful, I've had to not keep my foot on the throttle. And I'm going to use a couple of different analogies: throttle, neck, or of somebody else or something, in order to allow things to move. I mean, by doing that, you're choking off something else. And if I didn't step back, I think that would have very much limited my growth and my ability to connect with people, or anybody's ability to connect with people. I can only speak from my own experience, but instead of and I one of my gestures itself is judgment, and I have to really hone that in and understand that is an ego problem, and that is something that can be controlled only through self-awareness. I learned it over time, and honestly, being humbled a bunch. I mean, I'm not scared to fail and put myself out there. That's kind of what I've been really, really good at for my entire life. In college, in the Marine Corps, my nickname was Icebreaker, because I would go up and talk to girls, and then all my buddies would swoop in after I broke the ice, and then I'd be left just crying my beer, right? I only closed one time, and that was with my wife. So that's all I needed. But I think, you just have to continue to put yourself out there to learn that about yourself, to see what those are, because you don't know those strengths are until you've been put in an uncomfortable situation, and those strengths are going to rise. They will come to the surface upon stress. That's it.
I just want to kind of highlight something you said. I'm kind of trying to digest that laser beam show that's going in your brain.
So true.
But you mentioned this comment about, we have these theories of momentum, right? Where you want to constantly keep moving, because this momentum kind of compounds on top of each other, and that's how you accomplish goals. But I really like what you said about, hey, if you continue to do that, at least personally, if I continue to do that, then I lose sight of some things that may be important to me along the way, right? If you keep moving, you're going to pass some stuff by. And so really, I just really appreciate that comment. I was trying to think of the way to articulate that, and I think you said it so well. And so being more intentional and with taking some time to self-reflect and see what's important with you. You kind of talked about these opportunities where you're never shying away from an opportunity. You're willing to try stuff. You feel this is probably a good time for us to segue into, well, tell us about the opportunity to join F3. And was that one of your things where you're like, well, screw it, I'll just try it, or how'd that come about?
It was a little bit of both. I was doing CrossFit for 5 or 6 years. I even got my coaching certificate, so I was coaching, which I really enjoyed. And then there's some changes happened within the gym I was at, and I switched to another gym that I wasn't really taking. And then all of a sudden, COVID hit. And prior to that, a few months, actually, Sasquatch had mentioned, you should check this out. And he'd been going for about a year. And he was a site Q at the Maze here in Omaha. And I didn't think anything of it. Sasquatch and I weren't super close. We were amicable and more than acquaintances, but not yet quite friends. And we have some overlap of business, so that's how we connected. And I didn't think two things about it. And then I had heard about a site being close to my new house, and CrossFit was shut down. And I was like, I'm going to try this. So I just showed up on my own. After he had mentioned it, so I kind of looked up, hey, where would this be at? And I showed up, and there was a couple guys there that I knew. And, you know, as you show up, you're like, what the hell am I doing here? And what's this going to be like? But, you know, you still put out, it's a good workout. It's in the sun, you know, is late winter, early spring, March, April timeframe. And, or no, it's June, excuse me, it's June. So I wasn't doing anything for a few months. And I just remember it was good, and I just really appreciated the vulnerability, and I didn't quite grasp the magnitude. I don't think you are able to the first couple times you go. And I think that's true with trying things only once and for anything. You can't just try it once to understand it. It takes a couple of times. It's like going to church or meeting somebody that you somewhat are drawn to, whoever that is, or reading about a book only one time. You know, and I don't know if I would have been ready for it any other time. You know, same man, or a man doesn't step in the same river twice, kind of an idea. It's always new and evolving. But I know once we got done, I had a really good sweat, and I knew that there was some things in that group that I knew I wanted to see again. And so I honestly was hooked in the sense that I'm going to go back and do this. I know that in order for me to be my best self, my physical state is what aids my mental state. And so I needed to come back, and then a year later I took over a site queue, which was awesome. And I just think I loved the idea of entering in and stripping yourself of the perception of whoever that is. Whatever it's unfortunate, and I'm trying to work on it, but sometimes who you are in daylight is different than who you are in the gloom. And I don't believe that to be the best, your best self. Those should start to blend, you know? So, and over time, I think you learn that in the gloom.
You know, that's so interesting. That's such a good point. I think, you know, we could go a step further. You know, not only is it you, right, that's coming in somewhat vulnerable, but you also have the perception of other men, right? And, you know, you mentioned knowing a couple of guys. I'm curious, did your perception of them change after seeing them at the workout? I mean, how do you go about meeting the guys when they're coming in at their most vulnerable versus kind of seeing them out in the real world?
You know, I mentioned kind of the neutral thoughts. When I saw them, my initial was like, how'd they learn about this? What are they doing out here? Right? And you're like, one, why haven't you told me about it if I know you decently? Why are you keeping this a secret, jerk? You know? But the other thing, that faded exceptionally fast. That was a very fleeting but vivid memory. But initially, when that thing left, what flowed in was grace and joy. Like, cool. Like, this is beyond that. This is beyond the way I know this person. And I was, I was open to the fact of learning more about them, even though I thought I knew them well. So that was really cool. And I thought that was really impressive that they were there, because it said a lot about them in my mind.
What do you think? So this morning I had the opportunity to work out with you, and you showed up to a running workout and you rode your bike because of a recent foot injury. And I think we have a lot of guys that are on the DL list or injured that could do the same, but they don't. And so somewhere along the way you got hooked, right? You decided this is the group where you're going to go and kind of connect with other guys. So what do you think it was? Like, what, maybe it's a series of events or different interactions, or what caused you to get to this point where you're willing to show up, ride a bike, pick up the sticks, help guys avoid dirt clumps in the road to prevent injury? I mean, you just you're all in, I would say. So I don't know, how did you get to that point?
I think what I've recognized about F3 and brotherhood in general, I was just contemplating this morning. Brotherhood has I think in my mind has a connotation of being exclusive. And I think it's the exact opposite as I've gotten older. I think if you do find yourself in a brotherhood, it is actually the most inclusive thing possible, in the sense that you take people as they are, and there's a role for everybody if you so choose to take it on. And I didn't want, I mean, even this last time, my M was like, so why are you going tomorrow? Like, you could probably get a better workout on the rower and doing some kettlebell stuff in the basement. Is it just the camaraderie that you're looking for? And I was trying to stammer through that conversation. Oh no, it's gonna be a fun workout. I ride my bike fairly hard, and I realized no, it's 100% the camaraderie. It is 1,000% the camaraderie. And the act of exercise is what creates the vulnerability, because you just endured some sort of stress together, which allows you to shift focus from yourself to others, and knowing that you just have a shared experience. And there's very, very few shared struggles outside of exercise these days that you get to share that burden with somebody else. So when I recognize that this fosters and creates that environment, it's something that I think is a necessity for my well-being. And I got out of my truck this morning, and I thought for 1 second, I was like, I should try to fight through it and just walk and jog. And I was like, and I knew I couldn't. I practiced last night. This is not going to go well. This is not going to do well for my foot. I can already tell. And I was slightly for a glint. I was going to be embarrassed. I was going to jump on my 75-year-old father's bike. That's the only bike I have. And I said I had to have a case of the efforts. I was like, screw this. These guys don't care. And one, if you do, and you think that they do, you're in the wrong place. You need to check your own ego. So.
Well, no, that's great. And I think that fellowship piece is what gets a lot of guys, right? I mean, we talk about it. We've interviewed, I don't know how many people we've interviewed, 70, 75, something like that, 75. I mean, overwhelmingly, the guys are saying, hey, it's a fellowship. It's a fellowship. I'm curious, you are a guy who I would describe as someone who probably doesn't know a stranger. I've seen you out, I've seen you work a room, and you just know everyone. You're pretty infectious. You want to have a conversation. People want to talk to you and get to know you. Where were you at in terms of fellowship, kind of before F3? Is this fulfilling something that you were missing, or do you feel like you're pretty solid there?
I have always been able to create relationships, but I've always been the initiator of all those relationships. I've always been the one that gives. And the one thing nice about moving to Omaha, I guess, I was the outsider, and I thought moving back to Omaha after I got a service was going to be like, snap a finger, just going to jump right in. It's going to be like, nothing ever changed. But the reality was that's ego in itself. And I thought everybody was just waiting for me to come home. And that's absolute BS, right? And at 25, I was like, 20, I got out in 20, I was 14, so I was like 26, 27 years old. And the reality was everybody doesn't care as much about you as you think you do. And you shouldn't care as much about others as you think you should. And that was that was a judgment thing. And so it forced me to get back and just, hey, I got to create my own routine. I got to create my own table for people to sit at versus trying to join somebody else's. And that way, I had to learn how to vet people properly versus just want to be liked. I had to go back to I had that mentality quite a bit when I was in high school. I didn't drink in high school, so I never followed the status quo. And I took pride in that. And I kind of lost that for a little while because we wanted to be accepted. And I just had bigger goals at that point in time. And I think I just lost those bigger goals because I wanted to be accepted. And that happened a little bit when I first moved back, because you just want to be accepted into a group. When reality is, especially since I was married, that's where your group starts. It's with your significant other. That's the most important relationship. So if I'm thinking that I need to build all these relationships externally, that probably means I need to tighten things up internally. And that helped. And that was when, my and I were going through a tough time, and we had to batten down the hatches and do some serious work for each other, and which helped in the long run now, which has been awesome. We just celebrated 10 years this year. But I've always been a connector, man. I believe heavily in that. I love the idea of saying, hey, call me, I've got a guy. Or, hey, we need some place to conjure. I'll find it. We'll get it going. We're going to come together on this. And I just think that's part of the pureness of life is getting together and enjoying each other's company.
Man, I love that. And this idea of like, if you are focused on all these external relationships, like draw that in, and what's that relationship with your end, that's solid. I am curious if you've ever found yourself battling with kind of like the desire to be everybody's friend, but then the kind of inability to do that, right? And then because for me, like when I'm trying to be everybody's friend, then I almost get more lonely, right? Because then I'm nobody's like close
Mhm.
friend. I don't know. Have you dealt with that, or is that something you've worked
Yeah,
through?
yeah, for sure. You know, so there is a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And there's some really good takeaways with that. But largely, it's in my mind, at Reinterview Times, it's one of the most well-known sales books ever written, or just social dynamics books ever created. This is back in the 1930s when Dale Carnegie wrote it. Now there's like whole schools of thought around this. Now, the one thing I think he failed to realize is that book in my mind was what I took away from it was, you're trying to be like everybody else at all times to be liked and accepted into a group. And that only takes you so far. Is it a good way to try to connect initially? Yes, absolutely it is. But until you are willing to expose, and I mean that in a sense of like vulnerability, your own thoughts, faults, fears, and rationale, you actually can't connect to that person. It's straight surface. And I think the idea of mimicking and mirroring other people's actions only gets you to the next conversation. And if you can't go past that, you probably shouldn't waste your time on that person. If you're looking for more of a meaningful relationship, and there should be some other reciprocation. There's a lot of attraction amongst everybody, and being self-aware of if you're seeing that or not. I don't need to waste my time on it if it's not, if the juju ain't there, man. And I looking back at Pony and I's relationship, like him and I both had when we first met each other, we both were like, who is this guy? And we both talked about this. We were walking on a golf course one day for 3.5 hours, and and which was beautiful was the fact that we gave each other enough grace to go to the next conversation, and that was really, really
Well,
cool.
and I love that. Let me just add something here,
Yeah.
because I really want to make sure we're focused on this. I think you said something a few minutes back about how you've always been a person who is the giver of the relationship, right? You put a lot into meeting the person and reaching out, and you did that in that example. And you reached out and said, hey, do you want to play in this tournament? Like, I think we've maybe talked to each other for 5 minutes total. And I am the type of person who, unfortunately, is a receiver. I don't like to make the first move or whatever. I mean, that sounds kind of strange and sexual in nature, but it's not intended to be. So like, I think it's important that like there are people like you who are, and I wish I was more like that, to where, hey, I need to take the initiative to, I recognize that there is value in this person and I want to get to know that person more. So what do I got to do to do that? And it's as easy as, hey, you want to go play around the golf, or hey, you want to go grab lunch. And so I really just want to, before you continue, thank you for doing that and highlight that. So guys, know that you can transition and do that, and you can make some lifelong friends doing that. I'm working on it, and I'm really appreciative of you for doing that. So go ahead, man. Good.
To end it up, to kind of wrap that thought up, it's not about the end result of the relationship. It's just about taking one more step further of gaining a relationship. And it doesn't mean where that thing's going to go 5-6 steps on the road with another guy from the Gloom or the Brotherhood. But in order to even know that something might exist beyond that, there has to be another conversation. There has to be another shared experience. There has to be another shared deep down. There has to be another element of volunteering your own time. You have to volunteer it because it's under your duress, not somebody else's, which that can only grow.
And I love that, because I think naturally I am the type of person who is a little judgmental of people that first come in. And I carry this persona of, oh, I don't need to go out of my way to be extra friendly to these guys and be welcoming. One, because I think I'm cooler than I actually am. And two, maybe I'm like I know what we have here and I don't really want to share it with everyone, even though I say I do. There is some, you know, some brotherhood of I'm being a little bit dogmatic here and I want to keep what I know is good for me and not share with other guys. You know, I remember you made a comment about, hey, how well do we know each other? What's this guy really about? I remember just being honest with both of you. When I first met you and when I met Plague, I'm like, I don't know about this guy. Like, he doesn't seem that, like, I would like this guy, honestly. And I don't really, I mean, I love you both now and I have great friendships with you, but I do carry that in. And I think a lot of guys do that. So, I mean, what's the advice to the guy that is kind of going through those motions and not, you know, I guess coming to this level of vulnerability that you guys are coming with?
My initial thought, and I'll step in first just because it's top of mind, was sometimes, and the analogy, there's two analogies that ring true with this. The baby bird steps outside the nest, and use that as a metaphor of like the young mind, an unmature mind, steps outside the nest and has to build its wings on the way down sometimes. You don't know how to fly unless you overcorrect. Because you just take one more step closer, and you don't actually get to the end. You have to overcorrect on that. And that same thought sometimes is you have to step into the dark room and see if there's solid ground on the other side. That's it. And then the other part of this is, if you are sure of who you are and you know how to communicate fairly effectively, or at least on your own terms, you shouldn't shy away, because our time is our most valuable asset, right? Everybody has the same, it's definitely finite. We all in this session dead, right? So you, in my mind, don't be afraid to go ask strong questions right off the bat, because if that person on the other side of that question can't answer that, there's an uncertainty there that either you can help them with, or you might not be a good fit to continue a conversation. I mean, all the things that you and I have talked about on the golf course, I mean, the gamut of like deep and shallow, it's been awesome. And it's really cool. That's what golf provides. But, you know, when people are getting married, I was like, are you talking about the important things right off the bat? If not, why you continue a relationship? My best friend's going through this right now. I'm like, should we talk about how you view spirituality and something bigger than yourself, how you view and interpret money, how do you view relationships outside of like friendships, and how do you expect the other person's family to react, or, you know, other circles of friends, and how you believe in parent your children, or do you want to even want them? And those like wickets are similar when you're meeting other people. Like, hey man, how do you handle challenge? What's your biggest challenge right now? Oh no man, life's good. Bullshit. You know, cut the crap. I don't have time to waste on a relationship if you can't tell me what's going on in the world. You know what I mean? Like, who's awesome at that is slow pitch, man. Slow pitch cuts right to the center of it. He just doesn't have time. He knows that he's gone through enough experience and BS himself where he's been the BSer. It's not even worth my energy anymore. And I love that. That's such a pure, free space to be in. And I give any recommendation to anybody, work closer to that and you're going the right direction.
Well said, man. I don't think I would add anything other than I think we as a group need to be prepared to meet a guy wherever he's at, and a lot of it's timing. I think one of the most powerful things that I've done is working with Firewalker and this idea of like, what are your values? And most of us would say, well, I think I value like honesty and okay, what do those mean? What do you look like when you're living those out? And going through that, I think a lot of Americans, but you know, sticking to just men, a lot of guys, we've never thought through that. And if you don't know who you are, if you're not self-aware and you don't have values that allow you to be consistent in your decision making, I think it's really tough. So something we could all do is just be more self-aware and figure out what do we really believe. So I love your analogies there. LPC, I do want to get to the subject of faith with you and just kind of what your experience, your journey has been within that third F, and you know, I don't know, any thoughts there?
So I would say on structural faith, I'm a Christian. I was baptized I was brought up Catholic and went away from the Catholic Church over time, which was a big battle in itself for me. And eventually I got baptized. I was confirmed in the Catholic Church, but that's what they consider their baptism. And your baptism, whatever. I don't want to get into the rigors of the Catholic Church, whatever. But I was baptized at my other church 2 2018, 19. Accepted Christ as my savior. And the thing that came to my realization is my Christian faith is way less complicated than I make it. And my relationship with my creator is way less complicated than I make it. Hence the construct of religion. My faith and spirituality like are hand in hand, and continually jockey of where I'm kind of like residing at that moment. So spirituality has a tendency to be like in like oneness and clear thinking and thinking of something just bigger myself. But then the faith is blind in the sense that I know it's to an almighty power and creator. I'm giving that power to somebody else. And that's kind of a nuance or nebulous of that's where I'm at with that. I don't read the Bible a lot. It doesn't necessarily resonate with me in how it's written. So finding the right text to be able to grasp that is hard, and I haven't done a great job of finding that. However, when I do hear messages, they do tend to resonate, and if I can digest them, I'm not super smart and intellectual, so the Arabic and Latin transformations don't really reside heavily in my brain every day. So I need very plain speak, and sometimes I can be somewhat of a mouth breather, so I need to really dumb it down. But I just think my faith journey is just, I think there's a freeing element in it for me, and there's no use for kindness unless you believe in something bigger. Selfishness is a self-serving downward spiral, and I believe there's an opposite. There's an opposite to everything. So for however bad something is, there's an equal and opposite good, and you don't realize how vast that is. Like the devil and Jesus, those are complete opposites. And so for how dark and dreary this world can be, there only has to be something so bright and joyful and graceful on the other side of that. And that's where that really came from a foundation. Like there's just no other way it can be in my mind.
Man, I really appreciate that. I think some of the conversations we've had just about, how do you lead your family, right, towards some, spiritual guardrails or consistency. And, I think, I don't know, I love your, just your approach is phenomenal. Just being open to how, a power greater than ourselves would guide the discovery and growth in that area over time is really cool. So thank you for that. What would you say as far as like F3? I mean, F3 Omaha, are we creating space for other guys to do that same exploration, or any opportunities there that you would see?
I would say, I think there's another level, and there's another level of potential for sure. And that does not start in my mind from somebody in a structural leadership position. That is only a wildfire from a grass movement's effort. So as individuals, I think we have to take it upon ourselves to go beyond what cafeteria is, go beyond making connections. It is a contact sport, developing relationships, and you can only do that in proximity and consistency, and not shying away from having a conversation about it. You're not trying to convert anybody. You just want to know where somebody's at with it and what the relationship is with that. Even for the people that you hear about in the circle of trust that aren't considered themselves Christians, or even they would even say they might be agnostic or atheist, I would challenge the fact that your actions so otherwise, and defend your position. As long as you're willing to defend your position or have a conversation about it, that's where it would start. But everybody that is at F3 on a consistent basis is going in a healthy direction. And I would encourage anyone to go a step further in that direction and not just, wade in the water, continue swimming. Because if it's done this much good this far, everything generally has a hockey stick effect. And if you might be just before that hockey stick effect where it's a little unsure because you don't know who that person is on the other side of it, but you never know unless you do it.
Yeah, again, just Pony and I have been talking about we might start making people pay to listen to this podcast if the guys that we're interviewing are just full of wisdom and insight. And so I'm still trying to think through that because it is, you're right? Like if we try to design this program or programatize this, it doesn't work, right? Because it's got to be genuine, it's got to be authentic, and it's got to come from like a desire in every guy's heart to get to know the guy next to him.
Right. Well, one thing I really appreciate Clay, and I think you do a really good job of diffusing this right away. And I would consider it to maybe somewhat of a coping mechanism, but also somewhat of living your truth as you talk about your addiction issues in the past, and you were right up front with it. Where if you weren't right up front with that, I think people, in my perception, if I didn't know that right away, I would have apprehension once I heard it down the road. And that in itself is you're living your truth and you're putting yourself out there right where you're at, right? And the only way people connect is through struggle. And so that instantly recognizes somebody knows that you have already struggled, which gives them an opportunity to connect with you. Because people, as soon as like somebody talks to somebody and you're like, hey man, just met you. How you doing? I'm doing freaking great, man. Greatest day ever. And you're like, who the hell is this guy? I don't know. I talk to this guy. He has too much energy. He's too excited and he's full of crap. However, you're like, man, I don't know. It's a rough day today. I actually just lost my job. And you mean like, oh man, how can I help? What you want to connect through adversity. You don't want to connect through optimism. Optimism is a result and success is a result of the struggle. So they don't come before the other. And it's not a chicken or the egg thing. It is you must struggle in order to strive. And so that's how we connect to people. So if that's the way we connect.
Well, and I think, I think it kind of, vulnerability, whatever, faults, people's struggles, whatever, it kind of humanizes people, right?
Yeah.
Especially strangers that you don't really know. So you're right. It's very difficult to get to know someone when they're just cheerful all the time, right? There are guys out there, right? Samples may be one of the nicest, most friendliest guys you'll ever meet, and I don't know if he's ever had a bad day. I'm sure he does, but he just is so positive, and so there are going to be those outliers. But you're right. When there are guys, it's so surface level, as we kind of talked about earlier, where oh yeah, things are going good, work's good, family's good, whatever. But then whenever you get the guys that are like, hey, you know what, I'm working through this.
Mm-hmm.
It sucks. I don't know what to do. I've been having problems with my wife or at home, whatever it is. It creates this human element where we're like, okay, it kind of lowers them a little bit, or like your perception of them. We're like, oh, well, he has problems just like I do. And I can relate to maybe not everything, but to going through the struggles, I can certainly do that.
Mm-hmm. And it fills in the gaps, man. Like that's the important strip of the brotherhood is like somebody's either gone through this. There's nothing new here, guys. We're not reinventing anything. We just need to be reminded of what gets us to the next step. And that's love, kindness, grace, passion, consistency, fortitude, grit. Those things don't waver. Those are always applicable,
Yeah, something I've noticed too is the more, like when I tell somebody else my story or my struggle, then it reminds me, and then that creates some humility there that, because I can easily forget, right? I can easily fall back to this idea that I have the best ideas. I'm I'm as cool as Pony. Some of those lies that I tell myself. I am curious, LPC, and maybe a little bit different question for you, because I know you have a wealth of just insight and knowledge, but would be curious if you have any advice for guys in F3, maybe it's with men, it's packs, it's site cues, but then would also love to get like your maybe top 3 book recommendations for men, if you can boil it down to 3. I know.
Okay. So advice, I think there's very few instances in this world nowadays. We live in a world of comfort. So whatever discomfort looks like, you got to do it. You got to do hard things daily, whether that be emotionally, socially, or physically, or mentally, or spiritually. They have to be, you have to go through those. And they have to be done sometimes alone and sometimes with somebody else, but you have to do them because there's no diamonds without pressure, man. Like you have to have that pressure, and there's that growth. And honestly, that pressure and stress is what creates the memory. That's the stickiness of it. If it was easy, it would be fleeting, right? So, just a simple example, is it easier to remember the awesome sports game you went to for the free tickets? Or is it easier to remember, like, hey, we didn't have tickets to go to the sports game. We went down there blindly, found a guy at the bar. All of a sudden, we made friends. And it turns out he had amazing tickets that was up in a box. And all of a sudden, we just watched one of the greatest sports events of our lives. And we had to drive home. And I mean, like, the memory is through the struggle, okay? And we're about creating memories and experiences. And that's putting yourself out there in an uncomfortable position. So that would be the one piece of advice I'll give you, number one. And then the second thing would be checking the ego, man. There's got to be an element of fuck it, let's go. And that means, hey, I need to talk to somebody about my marital issues, my addiction issues, my ego issues. Somebody else is struggling or has struggled with that very recently that you can learn from and that you can lean on. And whether that be for 2 weeks, a month, a year, 10, they're there for that purpose. They're there for that season, and trust it. So those are the two advice I give guys in the gloom, and for them to share with any side clowns they know. Because that's leadership in itself, man. I mean, that's 101 servant leadership in terms of just being there for somebody and willing to carry the scars and the shield about that of just your learned struggle, challenges. Books. John Eldredge writes a really great one. Everybody talks about Wild at Heart. I think it's a little elementary. I think it's great insight. He wrote another one that I would recommend more fully, that I'm going to give you the name of. Eldredge. And another one that, let's see here, books. Let's see. I mean, I think Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, exceptional. And these are ones that have spoken to me, right, where I was at. I read that book and I was a certain person at that point. So these things really resonated with me. Extreme Ownership is awesome. David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me. I mean, listen to that guy read the book. I might as well be listening to the Rocky soundtrack. And it was super powerful. So that's another good one. The one I'm getting ready to read, I'm really excited about, is it's Napoleon Hill's Outwitting the Devil. I have not read that, but I am exceptionally excited to read that. I got that recommended to me yesterday. But the book by John Eldredge, which really allowed my relationship with other men to kind of foster and grow, because you really can't grow past the people that you're around unless they're ahead of you. And that's why you gotta have men that you surround with that are behind, and that's people who you want to be more like, as well as people you want to lead to where you're at. And so that's why there's a diverse group. And that goes exceptionally well with how you view your own father, with the relationship with your father, as well as Jesus or your Christ, your creator. But John Eldredge wrote a book called The Way of the Wild Heart. And that is a way more in-depth book than Wild at Heart. So I'd encourage anybody, not many people know about that. It was written about 5 years after Wild at Heart, but really goes more in depth about how we think as a man, and maybe gives some explanation to what your relationships are with other men, and can give you a little bit more humility, as well as hope that tomorrow's another day, sun is going to come up, and I have another opportunity to try this.
That's awesome, man. I would, thinking you were going to share the 4 Agreements or a book you recommended to me, Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters.
Yeah, those two. Yeah.
So if you're looking for a book recommendation, this is your guy, I think.
Those two are exceptional too. Strong Fathers, Strong Dollars by John Eldridge, which is awesome. I got 2 girls, so and that's all all I'll have, so that's a big deal. 4 Agreements. If you're battling anything with just wanting to be that idea of wanting to be liked or like your perception, and you want to have a stronger backbone about just your own self, 4 Agreements is exceptional. I mean, unparalleled, worth reading multiple times. I'm on my 2nd time right now. I touch on goes. It sits by my bedside. I just gave it to my wife to read, and I'm excited to hear about her experience with it. But it's instrumental.
Well, thank you for the advice and for the recommendations. I know I probably need to pick up one of those books. I haven't read a book since Free to Lead, so I'll add one of those to my list. We ask guys for the recommendations and things where we like to kind of end or ask the interviewee, what can we be praying for you? What words of encouragement are you looking for if we see you out in the gloom? Say, hey, LPC, how's this going? What are we looking at?
I would just say, back to my relationship with my am. I always appreciate guys' sincerity about how are things with your am. Even though that's the most important relationship of your life, it is also the one that needs the most watering. It needs the most nurturing, needs the most attention. And that is the whole of the ship, man. If that is not staying clean, sharp, inspected, ready, you can't go very far. And so just pray for my heart, I guess, that I can, you want to have that openness to just be with them. So, yeah. We are good. It's just something I challenge with. It's just selfishness in that aspect of grace. So,
Yeah.
Well, no, that's good. And Plague actually kind of has a new question that has gotten a mixed bag of responses. The question is, what do you want your legacy to be? And that can be with F3, or it can just be, your overall, my whole life. Here's what I want out of my life. And we're kind of curious what your position is there.
Okay. Simplicity of this is, I want my daughter, I can't talk about this very often because I get really choked up. I want my daughters to see a man who fights as passionately as he loves, and my wife to know that she has a loyal companion at all times, and I will not leave her side. I'll keep getting back up. So if somebody were to say, hey, I need Tyson Compton and LPC in the gloom, the guy never gave up, and he never stopped. Never stopped wanting to bring people with him. So, if they're seeing that in me and always striving for the potential, then I'm doing the right things, because I don't want them to feel ever limited by their own perceived restrictions. And the only way they see that is through my actions and through the words I use and how I treat their mother. And I think it's just super important to have that resiliency for whatever it is you love and believe in, and that they see that in me.
Man, you got me feeling that too. Thank you for sharing that. I think what's cool to me is what that looks like, and so you've thought about it. You've really thought through what's the driver, what's my why, what's my motive, and it's your family, which I think is great. And I can say from my experience with you don't give up. You do make everybody around you better. And so I just encourage you, man. You are a great leader, and definitely have had a positive impact on me as a man and as a person. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for just your time today. We'll do a little Name-orama to wrap us up here. I'll start. Brinkley Hardy 36, The Plague.
John Whitworth 31, Pony Express.
Hey.
And I'm Tyson Compton, 37 LPC.
LPC. And do boots. You never told us what that means. LPC.
Hey, other personnel carriers. It's a dumb Army term, but I was in the Marine Corps. I just called them boots.
Awesome. Hey, I love you, man.
Thank you for your time, man.
Have a good one, guys. Merry Christmas. I don't see you, and hope to see you guys in the loop. Cheers.
You too, brother. See ya.
Love you, brother.